What did George Gamow retrodict? And I'm glad for the opportunity to use this word. It was a new one for me. And that future observations have supported happened in the first few minutes after the Big Bang. And the just to give you some idea of where I'm heading, I think that your answer to this question should lead us toward the anthropic principle, which will then bring us back, of course, to your and Stephen's collaboration.
Right. So you're right that when Lemaitre discovered the expansion of the universe in 1927, when working with Einstein's theory of relativity, interestingly, in 1927, the very first of his papers on the expansion, there was no Big Bang. In fact, Lemaitre had started from Einstein's static universe and had realized that the slightest perturbation would turn this into an expanding universe. But then, interestingly, a few years later, he realizes, well, okay, this static universe, who put it there? It's an unstable thing. It doesn't make any sense. And so he realizes that a much more natural beginning is one in which there's a genuine origin, a genuine Big Bang, an origin of time. And so he goes on to construct all sorts of expanding universes. As you say, he sort of evokes the idea that the origin of time, what we call today the Big Bang, is some sort of primeval atom, which he doesn't quite specify. I think he coins that term to indicate that somehow quantum theory should become important at these very earliest stages of the universe. Gamow, as you say, developed that theory into a hot Big Bang. So Gamow essentially applied the new nuclear physics to that problem and famously discovered that if there was a Big Bang, if there was a hot Big Bang, if the universe was once very small and hot, there should be an afterglow, there should be a remnant radiation of that era, which we now know as the cosmic microwave background radiation. But be it Gamow's model or the current, the present day model or current refined theory of Big Bang cosmology with inflation and everything, or even Lemaitre's original theory, there's something profoundly strange about this whole conception. In order to get a universe out of a Big Bang, in which complex structures can develop, in which galaxies can grow, in which eventually life can form, that doesn't come out just out of any Big Bang. It requires very special conditions in the beginning. Even just to have an arrow of time, you need to have a very low entropy in the beginning. You can't have a universe that expands too fast with too much dark energy, or because it will end up empty. You can't have a universe that expands too slowly because that will recollapse, and so forth and so forth. So there's a long list of properties that the universe must have in order for it to be a habitable place. And so the Big Bang, in some sense, is in some sense both the cornerstone and the Achilles heel of modern cosmology. It's the cornerstone because clearly it works very well. It's a model of an expanding universe that fits many, many observations. It's the Achilles heel because it requires supremely fine-tuned initial conditions in order to produce the universe like we observe it. And some people have evoked the anthropic principle as an explanation. Stephen too toyed with that idea, right? I don't think it works. I think we have a better idea now. I also think it's very strange on philosophical grounds, sort of a pre-Copernican idea to put one or another property relevant for life back on sort of a privileged footing. But the question is very relevant. Out of a random Big Bang doesn't come a universe full of life. So clearly something is missing from traditional Big Bang cosmology. And this, in fact, even the first traces of that problem are already evident in Lemaitre's writings in the 1930s.
Mm-hmm. I'll respond again with a few comments. You mentioned that the Lemaitre's primeval atom should evoke, or maybe he coined that term to evoke the importance of quantum theory at the beginning of time. And of course, that's so relevant to your and Stephen's collaboration and to his work that stemmed, at least in part, from Penrose's on black holes, because black holes sort of merge these incommensurable theories of the massive, so general relativity, and then the extremely small quantum theory. And we'll get to that. But first, I'd like to focus a bit more on the fine tuning. So the fine tuning, which you already said, is that our universe seems incredibly well orchestrated for life. I mean, if the mass of hydrogen or the strength of any of the four forces, there are so many different constants that if they were slightly different, life just couldn't evolve. And this raises this question of whether or not the universe is fine-tuned for life. Parenthetically, actually, I'll ask this, something that I found very interesting that I hadn't considered at all or heard at all until I read your book, is that one of these fine-tuning anomalies is that or apparent fine-tuning, let me put it that way, anomalies, is that our universe has three large spatial dimensions instead of, say, two. And this had never occurred to me. What would a two-dimensional universe look like? And if it, I mean, the pictures of the cats, and you can tell I like cats, so I like your. And actually, maybe you can't, since we've had to turn the video off. But I like cats a lot, and there are a lot of cute pictures of cats in your book. But why would a two-dimensional universe apparently be inhospitable for life? And I think that's a mini question. The second question that follows, though, is, well, I'll let you answer that first.
Oh, it's just you need a certain level of complexity, right? In order to have something, in order to have the possibility to reproduce. It's not, of course, excluded, but it seems, strangely enough, 3 seems to be the optimum number, because you could also ask, well, why not 4 or 5? But more spatial dimensions often also become problematic if only, you wouldn't even have stable solar systems in more spatial dimensions. So there seems to be something particularly habitable about 3. Enough to have complexity and not too much to have, perhaps in a way, too much randomness.
Okay, great. Well, so where I was going to go next, that second question that I alluded to, is one of the very important foils in the book to your collaboration with Stephen is Andre Linde and Leonard Susskind and some other string theorists' way of dealing with fine-tuning. And this theory is that of the multiverse, or the string theoretic multiverse. And maybe you could say briefly what this theory was, and then why Stephen found the anthropic reasoning in it so odious, and why he rejected it and ended up looking for other ways for accounting for the apparent fine-tuning that you two ended up developing with the top-down cosmology, but you don't have to worry about that yet.
Yeah, right. So the multiverse as an idea to, an explanation, so to speak, for the fine-tuning of our universe was in fact in full swing and very popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. I'd say it sort of started with Linde's work on inflation and eternal inflation. So Linde realized that, maybe inflation, the very early phase of expansion, of rapid expansion of the universe that produces the seeds of the galaxies, maybe inflation doesn't stop and produces not one universe, but many, or maybe even infinitely many. And then this sort of got combined with developments in string theory that showed that there seemed to be so many different ways to compactify their 6 extra dimensions, producing so many different physical worlds of our experience with different particles, different forces, and so forth, that, perhaps combined with eternal inflation, all those worlds are out there. And somehow this appealed to scientists, cosmologists, I guess because it gave such a radically different angle to consider these fine-tunings. Maybe they're just, maybe all those different universes are out there and we're just lucky. Maybe most of them are lifeless. And once in a while you hit the jackpot or so. That said, the problem with the multiverse was there from the start as well. These theories of eternal inflation, which produced all these different universes, they did not say, nothing in those theories gave any indication in what sort of universe we should find ourselves. These were standard physical theories where there is no mention of any observer or any preferred observer. Hence, as you say, they go together with the anthropic principle as an additional post-selection principle that is invoked to select this or that universe. The problem with that is that it becomes the universe you end up with depends on the kind of anthropic considerations you employ. You might have your view of what constitutes an anthropic principle. I might have a different view. Someone else might have yet another view, and there is no rational way for us to agree, because we can all have our own preferred anthropic property of the universe that we employ to select one of these. And so the theory of the multiverse, because of that problem, it's known as the measure problem in cosmology. We don't have a good measure to compare the relative weight, so to speak, the relative importance, the role of different universes in the multiverse. And that problem was there from the beginning. In the 90s, when I was a student of Stevens, it was already clear that there was a problem. It was not clear what we should do about it. I think the general expectation was that somehow the problem was going to go away. We were going to find some sort of resolution that we could all agree on. But then gradually it became clear that the problem was rather fundamental. The theory of the multiverse is just simply disconnected from, I would say, our position as observers within this universe. It doesn't take this into account. It's a theory that tries to describe the cosmos as a whole as if we're outside, as if we're looking down upon this huge ensemble of universes, and we use some sort of principle to select ours. It takes, in other words, a kind of godlike view on the cosmos. And of course, this is wrong, but physics has proceeded that way for centuries, and so why not try? And so, yeah, that's roughly, I think, the situation in the late 90s, and I sense that Hawking was so worried about this measure problem that he thought there was something wrong with this entire multiverse idea. Of course, this didn't mean he had a solution, but he felt that the measure problem was in fact the cosmological analog of the famous information problem inside black holes, a profound paradox that arises from bringing together quantum theory and relativity not in the right way. So that's, I think, what the multiverse context of the late 90s, early 2000s, what that was about.